The stars looked different when you knew you were about to die. Lieutenant Commander Dae-ho Kim pressed his face against the small window of his stealth pod and watched the enemy mothership grow larger. The massive alien vessel stretched across space like a dark metal mountain. Its surface was covered with weapon ports and strange towers that glowed with purple light. Behind him, the human battleship Soul's Pride was breaking apart. Explosions lit up the darkness as the Valkyrie weapons tore through the ship's armor. Dae-ho had watched 300 good people die in the last hour. Soon he would join them. "This is Admiral Park," came the voice through his radio. "Are you ready, Dae-ho?" "As ready as anyone can be for a suicide mission," he replied. His hands moved over the pod's controls without thinking. 3 years of war had made these movements automatic. The Soul's Pride fired its last missiles at the enemy ship. The explosions created bright flashes against the alien hull, but did no real damage. The mothership was too big, too strong. It had destroyed 17 human colonies already. Earth would be next. "Remember," Admiral Park said, "you have 72 hours before they reach Earth. The quantum bombs are hidden in your equipment. Find their power source," and static filled the radio as another explosion shook the dying battleship. Dae-ho knew he was on his own now. His pod shot away from the Soul's Pride just as the ship's reactor exploded. The blast pushed his small craft toward the enemy vessel even faster. Dae-ho watched his former home disappear in a ball of fire. All those people gone. Just like that. The alien mothership filled his entire view now. It was 50 kilometers long and 20 kilometers wide. Millions of lights moved across its surface like a metal city floating in space. How could one man fight something so huge? But Dae-ho had volunteered for this mission. Earth's best scientists had spent months planning it. They had studied every piece of alien technology they could find. They had learned about Valkyrie society from captured prisoners. And they had discovered something important. The aliens had never faced an enemy who could hide inside their own ship. The Valkyrie were tall, thin creatures with hard shells like insects. They were strong and smart, but they thought in straight lines. They attacked from the front with big fleets and powerful weapons. The idea of one enemy sneaking inside their ship was impossible to them. Dae-ho's pod was designed to look like space junk after it crashed. The outer hull would break apart and scatter pieces everywhere. Hidden inside was a smaller survival module with everything he needed. His hands shook as he prepared for impact. The alien ship's gravity pulled his pod down toward a section covered with large openings. Waste disposal, according to their intelligence reports, perfect. The crash came faster than expected. Metal screamed against metal as the pod hit the alien hull and bounced twice before sliding into one of the large openings. Dae-ho's head hit the side wall hard enough to make him see stars. Blood ran down his face from a cut above his eye. Emergency? Lights flashed red inside the pod. Systems were failing everywhere. He had maybe 10 minutes before the life support died completely. Working quickly, Dae-ho pulled on his environment suit and grabbed his equipment packs. The quantum bombs were disguised as standard human technology. If the aliens found them, they would just look like broken communication devices. He opened the pod's emergency hatch and climbed out into an alien world. The waste disposal area was huge. Conveyor belts carried garbage and broken equipment toward processing machines that crushed everything into small cubes. The smell was terrible, even through his suit's filters. Strange alien waste mixed with the sharp scent of burning metal. Purple. Lights cast weird shadows everywhere. The walls were covered with symbols that looked like twisted insects. Pipes and cables ran along the ceiling in patterns that hurt to look at. Everything was built for creatures much taller than humans. Dae-ho activated his pod's self-destruct sequence. In 30 seconds, it would explode and scatter pieces everywhere. The aliens would find debris from a human escape pod, but nothing to show that anyone had survived. He ran toward a maintenance tunnel just as the explosion lit up the waste disposal area. Pieces of his pod flew past him and clattered against the walls. Perfect. Now he was officially dead. The maintenance tunnel was barely wide enough for his shoulders. The aliens were too tall to fit in spaces like this. That was his first advantage. He crawled through the tunnel for what felt like hours, following a map he had memorized during the flight. Finally, he reached a larger maintenance area deep inside the ship. Old equipment filled the space, covered with dust and alien writing. This section looked abandoned. It would make a good hiding place. Day-ho set up a small camp behind some broken machinery. He unpacked his equipment and checked everything twice. Food for a week, water recycler, energy cells, electronic tools, medical supplies. And hidden among it all, the quantum bombs that could destroy this entire ship. He activated a small communication device and tried to contact Earth. Only static answered. The alien ship's hull was too thick, or maybe Earth was already too far away. He was truly alone now. Through a small window, he could see stars moving past. The mothership was traveling faster than any human ship could match. Soon it would reach Earth's solar system. Then the planet-killing weapons would fire, and billions of people would die, unless one man could stop it. Deho pulled out a tablet and began studying the intelligence reports again. The alien ship had 3 critical systems: the quantum power core that fed energy to everything, the neural network that controlled all ship functions, and the life support systems that kept 50,000 Valkyrie alive. Destroy any one of those systems, and the ship would be crippled. Destroy all 3, and it would become a tomb floating in space. But first, he needed to learn how to move around without being caught. The aliens would be looking for survivors from the human fleet. They would search the obvious places but might ignore the forgotten corners where broken machinery gathered dust. He opened his equipment pack and pulled out a small scanning device. It could detect alien movement through walls and track patrol patterns. The Valkyrie moved in groups of 3, walking the same routes every few hours. Military discipline, but also predictable behavior. Deho smiled for the first time since leaving Earth. Predictable enemies were easier to avoid. He checked his watch. 71 hours and 43 minutes until the ship reached Earth. Time to start exploring his new home. The alien symbols on the walls meant nothing to him yet, but he would learn. The sounds of alien voices echoing through corridors were strange, but he would understand their patterns. The ship felt huge and impossible, but he would map every important section, 1 human against 50,000 aliens and the most powerful warship in the galaxy. The odds were hopeless. Deho checked his weapons and started toward the nearest corridor. He had work to do. Outside the small window, stars continued to move past as the mothership carried its crew toward their final battle, but they didn't know that death was already aboard their ship, hiding in the shadows and learning their weaknesses. They would learn soon enough. Deho moved through the maintenance tunnels like a ghost. His scanner showed 3 Valkyrie guards walking past overhead, their heavy footsteps echoing through the metal floor. He waited until the sounds faded before climbing up to the next level. The alien ship was even bigger inside than it looked from space. Corridors stretched in every direction, some wide enough for vehicles, others narrow like the tunnels he used to hide. Purple lights lined the walls in patterns that seemed random but probably meant something to alien minds. He had been exploring for 6 hours now. His tablet was filling up with a rough map of the ship's layout. The Valkyrie had built their vessel like a city with different sections for different purposes. Living areas, workspaces, storage zones, and weapon control rooms were all connected by a network of corridors and lift systems. The aliens themselves were stranger than the intelligence reports had described. Through gaps in the wall panels, Deho watched them work and move around their ship. They were tall and thin, with 4 arms and hard shells that looked like insect armor. Their faces had too many eyes and mouths that opened sideways instead of up and down, but it was their behavior that interested him most. Every Valkyrie moved in exactly the same way. They walked at the same speed, turned corners at the same angle, and stopped at the same places. Even their conversations followed patterns. One alien would make a sound, the second would respond in a specific way, and the third would end the exchange with the same noise every time. Military discipline taken to an extreme. No creativity, no independent thinking. They followed orders and routines without question. Deho smiled as he watched a patrol group walk past his hiding spot for the third time. Same route, same timing, same everything. These aliens had never faced an enemy who could adapt and change tactics. He waited until the patrol disappeared around a corner, then slipped out of the maintenance tunnel and into a storage room. Boxes and containers filled the space from floor to ceiling. Alien writing covered everything, but some of the symbols were starting to look familiar. The scanner in his hand beeped softly. Something electronic was active nearby. He followed the signal to a wall panel covered with blinking lights. It looked like a computer terminal, but the controls were designed for 4 armed operators. Deho pulled out a small toolkit and carefully removed the panel's cover. Inside were circuits and wires that looked almost normal. Different shapes and colors than human technology, but the basic principles seemed the same. Electricity flowing through connections to carry information. He attached a small recording device to one of the main data cables. If he could learn how their computers worked, he might be able to understand their language and control systems. The device started collecting information immediately. Streams of alien data flowed past its sensors. It would take time to analyze, but this was the first step toward understanding his enemy. A sound in the corridor made him freeze. Footsteps, but not the regular pattern of a patrol. These were faster, more urgent. He quickly replaced the panel cover and found a hiding spot behind some large containers. 2 Valkyrie entered the storage room. They moved differently from the others he had seen, less mechanical, more alert. Officers, maybe, or specialists of some kind. They went straight to the computer terminal he had just been examining. One of them activated the controls while the other watched the door. Alien words filled the air as they talked to each other. Their voices sounded like metal scraping against stone. The first alien typed commands into the terminal. Data flowed across the screen in streams of symbols and numbers. Then something changed. The alien stopped typing and made a sharp sound. It pointed at something on the screen and talked faster. Had they detected his recording device? Deho's hand moved to the pistol on his belt. If they discovered him now, the mission would be over before it really started. But the aliens didn't search the room. Instead, they finished their work at the terminal and left. Their footsteps faded down the corridor, returning to the regular patrol rhythm. Deho waited 10 minutes before coming out of hiding. He approached the terminal carefully and checked his recording device. Still active, still collecting data. Whatever had excited the aliens, it wasn't his equipment. He spent the next hour exploring more storage areas and maintenance spaces. The ship was full of places where one person could hide. Abandoned sections, forgotten storage rooms, and miles of maintenance tunnels that the tall aliens couldn't use. In one of these forgotten areas, he found the perfect place to set up a permanent base. It was a large room filled with old machinery that hadn't been used in years. Dust covered everything, and some of the equipment looked broken. The aliens had clearly forgotten about this place. Deho moved his supplies from the waste disposal area to this new hideout. It took 3 trips through the maintenance tunnels, but finally he had a secure base deep inside the enemy ship. He set up his equipment in a corner hidden behind some large machines. The quantum bombs went into a separate hiding place, disguised as more broken human technology. If the aliens found his base, they wouldn't immediately discover the real weapons. His communication device still couldn't reach Earth through the ship's hull, but he could pick up alien radio signals from all over the vessel. Hundreds of conversations in their strange language filled the airwaves. Orders, reports, routine communications. The recording device he had attached to the storage room terminal was already showing results. Patterns in the alien data were becoming clear. Their computer language used mathematical relationships that were similar to human systems. Different symbols, but the same basic logic. Deho connected the device to his tablet and started a translation program. It would take time to decode their language completely, but he was already beginning to recognize common words and phrases. He found references to Earth prey and final feeding that made his blood run cold. The aliens weren't just planning to destroy Earth. They wanted to harvest the planet's resources and use human survivors as food. Other data showed him the ship's basic layout. Power systems, life support, weapons control, navigation. All the critical systems he needed to destroy were protected by layers of security and guards. But the maintenance tunnels and forgotten spaces connected to everything every system needed. Power, every computer needed cooling. Every section needed air circulation. And all of these support systems ran through areas that the aliens ignored. Deho began planning his first moves. Small acts of sabotage that would look like equipment failures. The aliens would notice, but they would blame it on battle damage. From the fight with the Soul's Pride. He started with the life support system in an unused section of the ship. A few crossed wires, a redirected airflow, and suddenly that area became too hot for the aliens to use comfortably. They would have to reroute personnel and equipment, creating small changes in their routines. Next, he found a waste processing station and introduced a harmless but foul-smelling chemical into the system. The smell would spread through several decks, making the aliens uncomfortable and forcing them to run extra cleaning cycles. Finally, he accessed a communications relay and introduced tiny delays into some message transmissions. Not enough to stop communication, but enough to create small frustrations and timing problems. Each act of sabotage was minor by itself. But together, they would create a pattern of mysterious equipment failures that would make the aliens nervous and confused. Deho returned to his hidden base and checked his watch. 64 hours until the ship reached Earth. Time to let his enemies know that something was wrong with their perfect vessel. He activated his scanner and watched the alien movement patterns on nearby decks. Already, the small changes he had made were having effects. Patrol routes were shifting to investigate the problems. Maintenance teams were being called to fix mysterious failures. The aliens were reacting exactly as he had hoped. They were trying to solve problems using their rigid, predictable methods, but they were looking for big, obvious causes. They couldn't imagine that one small enemy was creating all these troubles. Deho settled in to wait and watch. Phase 1 of his plan was working. Soon it would be time for Phase 2. The translation program had been working for 12 hours, and Deho could finally understand pieces of alien conversation. Simple words first: move, stop, check, report. Then more complex ideas: power failure, system error, investigation, required. He sat in his hidden base, listening to radio traffic and watching his scanner show alien movement patterns throughout the ship. His small acts of sabotage were creating exactly the confusion he wanted. Maintenance teams were running from problem to problem, trying to fix things that seemed to break for no reason, but more importantly, he was learning how the aliens thought and worked. The Velkari had 3 main leaders on the ship. Commander Thankel controlled all military operations and security. Engineering Chief Veltar managed the ship's systems and repairs. Sub-Commander Keflin handled navigation and communications. Each one commanded thousands of aliens in their section. From listening to their conversations, Deho learned that the 3 leaders rarely agreed on anything. Thankel wanted more security patrols. Veltar demanded more engineers to fix the growing list of problems. Keflin worried about staying on schedule to reach Earth. Their arguments were always the same. Each leader wanted resources from the others, but none wanted to give up anything from their own section. They were too proud and rigid to work together. Effectively. Better yet, they were starting to blame each other for the equipment failures. Deho pulled up the ship's layout on his tablet and marked the locations he had identified as critical systems. The quantum power core was in the center of the ship, surrounded by heavy armor and guard posts. It fed energy to everything: weapons, life support, engines, computers. The neural network was more spread out. Computer nodes throughout the ship were connected by data cables that ran through every section. This network controlled automatic systems like doors, elevators, air circulation, and waste processing. Life support had 3 main centers. Each one could handle the air and water needs for about 20,000 aliens. Lose one center and the ship would be crowded but functional. Lose 2, and they would have to evacuate large sections. Lose all three and everyone aboard would die within hours. But Deho had discovered something more interesting than just the ship's systems. He had found their plans. Hidden in the data streams from the command center were detailed files about Earth, maps of every major city, lists of resources the aliens wanted to harvest, plans for human prison camps and processing centers. The Valkyrie weren't just going to destroy Earth's defenses and leave. They planned to strip the planet bare and turn the human survivors into slaves or food. Billions of people would suffer and die to feed the alien empire's expansion. This knowledge filled Deho with cold anger, but it also gave him new ideas for sabotage. He accessed the ship's food distribution system through a maintenance tunnel and introduced a mild toxin into specific storage areas. Not enough to kill, but enough to make hundreds of aliens sick with stomach problems. The medical teams would be overwhelmed trying to figure out what was causing the illness. Next, he found the central laundry system that cleaned the aliens' environment suits and uniforms. A few chemical adjustments, and soon their clothes would have an itchy, uncomfortable feeling that wouldn't go away no matter how many times they were washed. Finally, he accessed the ship's internal communication system and began introducing small errors into routine messages. Orders would arrive late or with wrong information. Status reports would contain mistakes that would require corrections and explanations. Each problem was small and seemed unrelated to the others. But together they were turning the smooth operation of the ship into a series of constant headaches. The aliens were starting to notice. Security patrols were becoming more frequent. Engineering teams were working overtime to solve problems that kept multiplying. Medical staff were treating more sick crew members every day. Through his scanner, Deho watched 3 security officers search a section near his hiding place. They moved through the area carefully, checking every room and storage space. But they were looking for a large group of human soldiers or hidden bombs. The idea that one person could be causing all their problems never occurred to them. The officers spent 2 hours searching the area where Deho had sabotaged the life support system. They found the evidence of his work, crossed wires and modified settings, but instead of realizing someone had deliberately changed things, they assumed it was damage from the battle with the Soul's Pride. Battle damage, one officer reported into his radio. Repair teams needed in Section 12. Deho smiled as he listened to the conversation. The aliens were fixing his sabotage, but they weren't learning from it. They would repair the damage and move on, never understanding that an enemy was actively working against them, but his work was getting more dangerous. The increased security patrols meant more chances of being discovered. He needed to be more careful about when and where he moved around the ship. He also needed to escalate his attacks. The small sabotage was creating confusion, but it wasn't going to stop the ship from reaching Earth. Soon, he would have to target the critical systems directly. First, though, he wanted to understand more about the aliens themselves. Deho accessed the ship's personnel files through a computer terminal in an abandoned office. Thousands of records filled the database, each one describing a different crew member. Their military ranks, job assignments, family connections, and personal histories were all recorded in careful detail. What he found was both useful and disturbing. Every Valkyrie on the ship was a career soldier. They had been bred and trained from birth to serve in the military. They knew nothing except following orders and fighting enemies. Independent thinking was not just discouraged, it was considered a mental illness, but they also had families back on their homeworlds. Children, mates, parents. The personnel files included pictures and personal messages from loved ones. These alien soldiers were not just monsters. They were people fighting for their own kind, just like human soldiers. This made Deho's mission both harder and easier. Harder because he couldn't simply hate his enemies anymore. Easier because their rigid thinking made them predictable. He copied the personnel files to his tablet and studied the command structure. Thankel, the security chief, had served in 23 battles and had never lost a fight. Veltar, the engineering chief, had designed weapon systems that had destroyed 6 human colonies. Kethlin, the sub-commander, was younger, but had Proven himself in 3 major space battles, all 3 were experienced, intelligent officers. But they had never faced an enemy like him. The alien military doctrine was based on overwhelming force and superior technology. They attacked with large fleets, destroyed enemy ships in direct combat, and conquered planets through orbital bombardment. The idea of infiltration and sabotage was completely foreign to them. Deho found training manuals in the database that confirmed this. Valkyrie military education focused on ship-to-ship combat, ground assault tactics, and occupation procedures. There were no lessons about protecting against infiltrators or dealing with internal sabotage. This was his greatest advantage. The aliens literally could not imagine what he was doing to their ship. He spent the next few hours studying their weapon systems. The planet-killing guns were powered directly from the quantum core and controlled through the neural network. Destroy either system, and the weapons would be useless. But he also discovered something that made him change his plans completely, hidden in the deepest files of the command database were orders from the Valkyrie High Command after destroying Earth. This ship was supposed to continue to other human colonies. 12 more worlds were on the target list, including the outer colonies where millions of human refugees had fled. This ship wasn't just Earth's problem. It was a threat to every human settlement in the galaxy. Deho looked at his watch. 57 hours until they reached Earth. Not much time to save one world, let alone 12. But he had learned something important about his enemies. They were predictable, rigid, and completely unprepared for the kind of war he was bringing to them. Time to show them what one determined human could do. Commander Thankel stood in the security center, staring at a wall covered with incident reports. In the past 24 hours, his teams had responded to 47 different problems throughout the ship. Equipment failures, system malfunctions, food poisoning, communication errors. None of them were major disasters, but together they were creating chaos. "Show me the pattern analysis," he ordered his aide, a junior officer named Fikton. Data flowed across the main screen. Red dots marked every incident location. Yellow lines showed patrol routes. Blue squares indicated repair activities. The display looked like a star map with too many connections. "There is no pattern, Commander," Fikton reported. "The incidents appear random. Battle damage from the human attack, most likely." Thankel made a sound of frustration that scraped like metal on stone. Something was wrong with that explanation, but he couldn't identify what bothered him about it. Meanwhile, 3 decks below, Deho watched the security center through a hidden camera he had placed in a ventilation shaft. The aliens were starting to worry, but they still didn't understand what they were facing. He moved through the maintenance tunnels toward his next target, the ship's water recycling system. Clean water was essential for keeping 50,000 aliens alive. A few changes to the filtration process would make the water taste terrible without making it dangerous to drink. The recycling center was guarded by 2 Valkyrie soldiers, but they were focused on the main entrance. They never looked at the maintenance hatch near the ceiling where Deho emerged from the tunnel system. He dropped silently into the room and moved to the main control panel. The aliens had their backs to him, talking in their grinding language about duty schedules and equipment checks. Perfect. Deho's tools made no sound as he opened the control panel and made his adjustments. A few crossed wires, some modified chemical settings, and the recycling system would start producing water that smelled like rotting eggs. He was almost finished when one of the guards turned around. The alien saw him immediately. 4 eyes widened in shock as it realized that an enemy was standing inside their secure facility. It reached for its weapon while opening its mouth to shout an alarm. Deho moved faster. His combat knife slid between the plates of the alien's shell armor and found the soft tissue underneath. The creature made a gurgling sound and collapsed. The second guard spun around just in time to see its partner fall. This alien was quicker, and already had its weapon halfway out of its holster when Deho's second knife caught it in the throat. Both guards died within seconds, but not silently. Their bodies hit the floor with metallic crashes that echoed through the room. Deho froze, listening for sounds of alarm. Had anyone heard the noise? Were more guards coming to investigate? Footsteps approached from the main corridor. He finished his sabotage quickly and climbed back into the maintenance tunnel. Just as 3 more aliens entered the recycling center, their shouts of alarm filled the air as they discovered the bodies. Emergency signals began flashing throughout the ship. This time, the aliens knew they had an enemy aboard. From his hiding place in the tunnel, Daeho listened to the radio traffic exploding across all frequencies. Orders flew back and forth as security teams mobilized throughout the ship. Search parties formed and began checking every room, every corridor, every storage area, but they were looking for a group of human soldiers. The idea that one person had killed 2 guards and sabotaged their water system was still beyond their imagination. Daeho crawled through the tunnels toward a different section of the ship. The maintenance system was like a second set of corridors that the aliens rarely used. He could move anywhere without being seen. As long as he stayed inside the walls, he emerged in an unused storage room and activated his scanner. Red dots filled the display as hundreds of aliens spread out through the ship on search missions. They were being thorough, but they were also predictable. Security teams moved in groups of 5. Searching assigned areas in systematic patterns, they checked every room completely before moving to the next section. This meant that areas they had already searched would be empty for hours. Daeho waited until a search team finished checking the section around his hidden base, then moved back to collect some equipment. He needed to accelerate his sabotage before the aliens figured out how to counter his attacks. The next target was the ship's communication system. If he could disrupt their ability to coordinate, the search teams would become confused and inefficient. The main communications center was heavily guarded now, but the system used relay stations throughout the ship to boost signal strength. These relay stations were usually unguarded. Because they were considered non-critical equipment, Daeho found the nearest relay station in a forgotten corner of the engineering section. It was a room full of electronic equipment that hummed with energy. No guards, no alarms, no security cameras. He connected his portable computer to the main data flow and began uploading a virus he had designed using the alien programming language his translation software had decoded. The virus would spread through the communication network slowly, creating delays and errors that would grow worse over time. While the virus uploaded, he also placed small explosive charges on key pieces of equipment. Not enough to destroy the station completely, but enough to create spectacular failures that would confuse the repair teams. The work took 20 minutes. When he was finished, the communication system would start developing problems that would get worse every hour. Messages would be delayed, corrupted, or sent to the wrong recipients. Command and control would slowly break down as he prepared to leave. His scanner showed a search team approaching the area. 5 aliens moving in standard formation, checking every room methodically. They would reach the relay station in minutes. Daeho had 2 choices: hide and hope they didn't find him, or eliminate the threat. He chose to fight. The search team entered the relay station, expecting to find empty equipment rooms. Instead, they found death waiting in the shadows. Daeho had positioned himself behind a large piece of equipment near the door. As the first alien entered, he struck from behind with his knife. The creature fell silently. The second alien saw its partner collapse and began to turn around. Daeho's pistol fired once, the sound muffled by a silencer. The alien dropped. The remaining 3 aliens were now alert and had their weapons drawn. But they were crowded together in the doorway, getting in each other's way. Daeho rolled across the floor and came up behind a different piece of equipment, energy. Beams flashed through the air where he had been hiding. The aliens' weapons were powerful but slow to recharge between shots. He counted the timing, then popped up and fired 3 quick shots. 2 more aliens fell. The last one dove for cover behind a control panel and began shouting into its radio for backup. Daeho couldn't let it call for help. He pulled out one of his small explosive charges and threw it across the room. The alien saw the device coming and tried to run, but the explosion caught it in the open. Silence returned to the relay station. 5 alien bodies lay scattered around the room, and the smell of burned electronics filled the air, but the fight had taken too long. Daeho's scanner showed more search teams converging on this section. The lone survivor had probably managed to send some kind of distress signal before dying. He grabbed his equipment and ran for the nearest maintenance tunnel. Behind him, alien voices were already shouting in the corridors as reinforcements arrived. The hunt was on. Over the next 6 hours, Daeho played a deadly game of hide and seek throughout the ship. The aliens had finally realized they were dealing with a single infiltrator, and they were adapting their tactics accordingly. Search teams now moved in larger groups and checked the maintenance tunnels as well as the regular rooms. They sealed off sections after searching them and posted guards at key locations. Commander Thankel was learning from his mistakes, but Daeho was learning too. He discovered that the aliens couldn't see well in total darkness, while his human eyes could adapt to very low light levels. He found that their hearing was sensitive to high-pitched sounds, which he could use to distract them. And he learned that their rigid formations made them vulnerable to quick, unexpected attacks. He killed 12 more aliens during those 6 hours of running battles. Each death made the survivors more cautious and more desperate. They were starting to fear the human ghost that appeared from nowhere, killed their people, and vanished back into the walls, but the constant fighting was wearing him down. He was tired, injured, and running low on ammunition. The aliens had superior numbers and were slowly learning how to counter his advantages. Worse, the ship was getting closer to Earth with every passing hour. Checked his watch as he rested in a sealed maintenance shaft. 41 hours until they reached Earth. Time to stop playing games and start the real war. He activated his portable computer and began uploading his communication virus to additional relay stations throughout the ship. The aliens' coordination was about to get much worse. Then he pulled out the first of his quantum bombs and began programming its timer. The alien mothership was about to learn what one human could do when he stopped hiding and started fighting back. Engineering Chief Veltar stared at the status board in disbelief. Half the ship's systems were reporting errors. The water recycling plant was producing liquid that smelled like death. Communication delays were causing confusion throughout all departments. 3 relay stations had exploded for no apparent reason. And now the environmental controls were failing in random sections. How many crew members are sick? He asked his assistant. 2,000 and rising, Chief. Stomach problems, skin irritation, respiratory issues. Medical says they can't identify the cause. Veltar's forearms moved across his control panels, trying to coordinate repair efforts. But every time his teams fixed one problem, 2 more appeared somewhere else. It was like the ship itself was turning against them. In the quantum core chamber, deep in the heart of the ship, Daeho worked quickly to place his first bomb. The massive energy generator hummed with power that could be felt through the floor and walls. Pipes and cables carried that energy to every weapon, every system, every light on the vessel. The bomb was small enough to fit in his hand, but it contained enough destructive force to crack a planet. He attached it to a support beam near the core's main energy coupling and set the timer for 18 hours. Not long enough to reach Earth, but long enough for his other plans to work. This bomb wasn't meant to destroy the core immediately. Instead, it would damage the power distribution system and force the aliens to reduce energy to non-essential systems. Lights would dim, environmental controls would fail, and weapon charging would take longer. As he worked, his communication virus spread through the ship's network like a digital plague. Messages arrived hours late or not at all. Orders were scrambled and sent to wrong departments. Status reports contained false information that sent repair teams to empty corridors while real problems went unnoticed. Commander Thankel was experiencing this chaos firsthand in the security center. His screen showed conflicting information about the human infiltrator's location. Some reports placed the enemy in Section 12, while others claimed he was simultaneously in Sections 4, 17, and 23. Sir, we're getting reports of sabotage in the weapon control systems, reported Fikton, his aide. What kind of sabotage? Unknown, sir. The reports are unclear. Some teams report damaged equipment, others say everything appears normal. Communication problems are making it difficult to verify anything? Thankel wanted to roar in frustration, but that would show weakness in front of his subordinates. Instead, he activated his personal communicator and tried to contact engineering. Chief Veltar static filled the channel. Then Veltar's voice crackled through, distorted and barely understandable. Thank you, L. Hear me, systems failing. Need more security. Repeat your message, Veltar. Communication is poor. Human is reware. My people are help. The signal died completely. Thankel tried to re-establish contact, but only silence answered his calls. Meanwhile, Deho had moved to his next target, the neural network nodes that controlled the ship's automatic systems. These computer centers were scattered throughout the vessel, each one managing different functions like door controls, elevator operations, waste processing, and environmental regulation. He found the first node in a restricted area guarded by 4 aliens. But his virus had already reached this location, and the guards were receiving conflicting orders through their radios. 2 of them had left their posts to investigate a false alarm 3 decks away. Deho eliminated the remaining guards quickly, and quietly then connected his computer to the neural network. The virus he uploaded this time was different from the communication disruptor. This one was designed to turn the ship's automatic systems into weapons against the crew. Doors would lock at random, trapping aliens in rooms or corridors. Elevators would stop between floors, leaving passengers stranded. Waste processing systems would reverse their flow, sending sewage into living areas. Environmental controls would create uncomfortable temperature changes that would drive the crew to distraction, but the most dangerous part of his virus was its learning capability. Every time the aliens tried to fix a problem, the virus would study their solution and find new ways to create different problems. The ship's own intelligence would become its enemy. He uploaded similar viruses to 3 more neural network nodes over the next few hours. Each location required careful planning and violent action to overcome the guards, but the results were worth the risk. By the time he finished, automatic systems throughout the ship were beginning to malfunction in subtle ways. Doors took longer to respond to commands. Elevators moved between floors at irregular speeds. Temperature controls drifted away from comfortable settings. The aliens noticed these problems, but they attributed them to battle damage or overloaded circuits. The idea that their own computer network was being turned against them was beyond their understanding. Subcommander Keflin was the first to realize something larger was happening. In the navigation center, he watched his displays show impossible readings. According to the ship's computers, they were simultaneously approaching Earth, flying away from it, and orbiting a star that didn't exist. Reset all navigation systems, he ordered his staff. The technicians worked for an hour to restart their equipment. When the systems came back online, the readings were even worse. Now the computers claimed they were flying backwards through time while upside down and inside a black hole. Sir, reported his chief technician, the computers appear to be confused. They're processing contradictory data and can't determine our actual position. Keflin felt a chill run through his shell armor. Navigation was critical to their mission. If they couldn't accurately track their position and speed, they might miss Earth entirely or arrive off schedule. He tried to contact Commander Thankel for additional technical support, but his communication system was also malfunctioning. Messages took minutes to transmit, and the responses he received often made no sense. Throughout the ship, similar scenes were playing out in every department. Medical teams couldn't track the growing number of sick crew members because their computers kept losing patient records. Engineering crews received work orders for repairs in sections that didn't exist. Weapon technicians found their targeting systems pointing at empty space while claiming to have locked onto multiple enemy fleets. The Valkyrie crew was beginning to panic. Their rigid military training had prepared them for direct combat and obvious emergencies, but not for a ship that seemed to be going insane around them. Deho watched the chaos unfold through hidden cameras and intercepted communications. His plan was working better than he had hoped. The aliens were so busy fighting their own equipment that security patrols had been reduced to handle repair emergencies. He used this confusion to place his second bomb in the main life support center. This device was set to explode in 12 hours, just before the first bomb damaged the power core. The timing was critical. The aliens needed to be dealing with environmental failures when their power system started to collapse. But as he worked in the life support center, Daeho made a disturbing discovery. The ship's air recycling system was more sophisticated than human intelligence had realized. It could maintain life support for the entire crew even if 2 of the 3 centers were destroyed. He would need to sabotage all 3 centers to suffocate the aliens. And he only had 2 more bombs, unless he could find another way. Daeho studied the life support schematics on his tablet. The system used a network of pipes and ducts to distribute air throughout the ship. What if he introduced something into that network? Not poison? He didn't have enough of any toxin to affect 50,000 aliens. But maybe something that would force them to evacuate large sections of the ship. He found what he needed in the ship's chemical storage areas. Industrial solvents used for cleaning equipment. Harmless in small amounts, but when mixed together and heated, they produced a gas that was irritating to Volcari respiratory systems. Over the next 6 hours, Daeho introduced these chemicals into air ducts throughout the ship. Heating elements from damaged equipment provided the energy to create the reaction. Soon, large sections of the vessel would be filled with air that was breathable but extremely unpleasant. As he finished this work, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Not emergency alarms, but the regular signals that marked shift changes and meal times. But the virus in the communication system had scrambled the timing, so the alarms were sounding at random intervals, day and night. The constant noise added to the crew's growing sense that their ship was falling apart around them. Daeho checked his watch. 24 hours until they reached Earth. His bombs were in place. His viruses were spreading, and the alien crew was becoming more confused and frightened by the hour. Time for the final phase of his plan. He pulled out his remaining quantum bomb and began programming it for the most important target of all, the ship's central command center, where the 3 alien leaders were trying desperately to maintain control of their dying vessel. Soon, they would learn that their enemy wasn't just inside their ship. He was coming for them personally. The hull breaches began at exactly the same moment across 17 different sections of the ship. Daeho's CONVENTIO and AL explosives ripped through the alien vessel's outer armor, creating holes that immediately began venting atmosphere into space. The sound was like a hurricane made of screaming metal as millions of cubic meters of air rushed out into the vacuum. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the ship, but many of them had been damaged by earlier explosions or were malfunctioning. Due to the neural network virus, entire sections lost pressure within minutes. Aliens who had been crowded into what they thought were safe areas suddenly found themselves gasping for breath as their air disappeared. Those lucky enough to be near emergency suit lockers scrambled to get protection before the atmosphere vanished completely. Commander Thankel was trapped in the security center when the explosion started. He felt his ears pop as pressure began dropping and realized immediately what was happening. The human wasn't just sabotaging their ship, he was trying to kill everyone aboard by venting their air into space. Emergency lights flashed red as hull breach alarms wailed throughout the vessel. Thankel managed to reach an environment suit locker and get protection. Just as the last of the breathable air whisked away through cracks in the sealed doors. Through his suit radio, he could hear the voices of his scattered crew crying for help, reporting casualties, and asking for orders he couldn't give. The communication system was still mostly dead, and he had no way to coordinate a response to this latest attack. But he could track the locations of the hull breaches on his few working displays. 17 different sections, all damaged simultaneously, in a pattern that showed careful planning and precise timing. This wasn't random destruction. The human had mapped their ship, studied their systems, and struck at exactly the right places to cause maximum casualties while preventing effective response. For the first time in his long military career, Thankel felt true fear, not fear of death in battle, which was honorable, but fear of an enemy who was always one step ahead, always invisible, always striking from unexpected directions. Where was the human now? Deho was moving through the maintenance tunnels toward the ship's bridge, where the senior officers would be trying to maintain command and control. His environment suit protected him from the vacuum in the damaged sections, and the artificial gravity was still working in most areas. Despite the power failures, the tunnels were filled with the sound of rushing air and groaning metal as the ship's structure adjusted to the sudden pressure changes. But they were also filled with something else, the bodies of aliens who had been caught in corridors. When the atmosphere vented, hundreds of Valkyrie crew members had died in the first few minutes after the hull breaches. Their rigid shell armor provided no protection against vacuum exposure. They lay scattered throughout the passages, their forearms reaching toward emergency hatches they had never reached. Deho felt no satisfaction at the sight. These were enemy soldiers who would have helped destroy Earth, but they were also people, with families and lives. War was ugly, but it was necessary. He reached the bridge level and emerged from a maintenance hatch into a corridor lined with the bodies of dead aliens. Emergency lighting cast weird shadows across their still forms, making the passage look like a scene from a nightmare. The bridge itself was still pressurized and had backup power running to critical systems. Through reinforced windows, Deho could see the three senior officers, Thankel, Veltar, and Kathleen, working frantically at control stations. They were trying to regain control of their dying ship, but their efforts were hopeless. Too many systems were damaged, too many crew members were dead, and the vessel itself was coming apart around them. Deho attached his final explosive charge to the bridge blast door and set the timer for 60 seconds. When it exploded, the door would be destroyed and the bridge would lose pressure. The three alien leaders would die, and any remaining command structure would collapse. But as he prepared to retreat to a safe distance, his radio crackled with an unexpected transmission. "Human," the voice spoke in broken English with a grinding alien accent. "We know you can hear us." Deho stopped moving. Someone on the bridge was trying to communicate with him. "We surrender," the voice continued. "Our ship is destroyed. Our mission has failed. We offer no more resistance." It was a trap, obviously. The aliens were trying to lure him into a false sense of security so they could capture or kill him. But something in the voice sounded different from the military communications he had been intercepting. This sounded like genuine desperation. "We know you seek to save your world," the voice said. "Your world is safe. We cannot reach it now. Our weapons are dead. Our engines are broken. Our crew is dying. You have won." Deho checked his watch. 15 hours until the ship was supposed to reach Earth, but the voice was right. This vessel could never threaten anyone in its current condition. "We ask only for mercy for our surviving people. Many are injured and cannot harm you. End this killing, and we will broadcast our surrender to all Valkyrie forces. Your people will know that humans cannot be conquered." The timer on his explosive showed 30 seconds remaining. Through the bridge windows, Deho could see one of the alien officers, probably Sub-Commander Kathleen based on his size and uniform, standing near a communication console. The alien was looking directly at the blast door, somehow knowing that his enemy was listening from the other side. 20 seconds, Deho muttered to himself. His mission orders were clear: destroy the ship and kill everyone aboard. Earth's survival depended on eliminating this threat completely, but did it really? The vessel was crippled beyond repair, its crew was scattered and dying, and its weapons were offline. More importantly, a surrender broadcast would be valuable propaganda for the human war effort. Other alien forces would learn that humans could not be defeated even by their most powerful weapons. 10 seconds. Deho's finger hovered over the detonator control. One press and the alien leaders would die. The ship would be completely without leadership, and the remaining crew would probably turn on each other in their desperation, but alive, these officers could order their forces to stand down and acknowledge human victory. 5 seconds. He made his decision. Deho disabled the timer with 2 seconds remaining and activated his own radio transmitter. "I'm listening," he said in English. There was a pause, then Kathleen's voice returned. You speak good. We can negotiate. There's nothing to negotiate. You're defeated. Your ship is dying and your crew will be dead within hours. Yes, but some still live. We can help them survive if you stop the killing. In exchange, we broadcast full surrender to all Valkyrie fleets. Your victory becomes known throughout the galaxy. Deho considered this offer. It made military sense. A public surrender would demoralize other alien forces and might prevent future attacks on human worlds. But it also meant letting enemy survivors live. How do I know you won't try? To repair your ship and continue your mission? Impossible, came Veltar's voice, the engineering chief joining the conversation. Main power core destroyed. Life support failing. Navigation systems dead. This vessel will never fly again. Then why should I let you live? Because, Commander Thankful's voice said, you are not like us. We have studied human military history from your colonies. You show mercy to defeated enemies. It is weakness, but it is also strength. It makes other enemies fear you more than death. Deho was surprised by the alien's insight. Human mercy was often seen as weakness by other species, but it also created a reputation for honorable conduct that could be more valuable than fear alone. What are your terms? He asked. Immediate surrender broadcast to all Valkyrie forces, Keflin replied. Orders to retreat from human space. Acknowledgement that humans cannot be conquered. In exchange, you allow medical aid for survivors and help with evacuation to remaining functional sections. It was a reasonable offer. But Deho had one more. Demand? The broadcast includes everything? You tell your people exactly how one human destroyed your entire ship. You make sure they understand what happens to anyone who threatens Earth. There was a long pause before Thankful answered. Agreed. But we ask one thing in return. What? Your name. Our people should know the identity of the warrior who defeated them. Deho smiled grimly inside his helmet. Lieutenant Commander Deho Kim, Earth Defense Force, remember it. We will, Thankful said. The galaxy will remember it. The bridge blast door began cycling open, its emergency system still functional despite the damage throughout the ship. Deho stepped through into the pressurized command center. His weapons ready but not raised, 3 alien officers stood waiting for him, their forearms spread wide in what was probably a gesture of surrender. They were taller than he had expected, but their shell armor was cracked and stained with their own blood. They looked like defeated enemies, not dangerous threats. Begin the broadcast, Deho ordered. Keflin moved to the communication console and began speaking in the Valkyrie language. His words went out through subspace transmitters to every alien ship and base within 50 light years, carrying news of defeat and surrender. As the broadcast continued, Deho watched the alien officers with careful attention. But instead of treachery, he saw only exhaust. The subspace transmission reached Earth 3 hours before the crippled alien mothership limped into the solar system on emergency power. Admiral Sunmi Park stood in the Defense Command Center, listening to the translated broadcast with growing amazement. The message was being repeated on all frequencies in both Valkyrie and broken English, ensuring that every ship and monitoring station in human space could receive it. This is Sub-Commander Keflin of the Valkyrie vessel Death's Herald, the alien voice said through the speakers. I announce the complete defeat of our forces by human military action. Our ship has been destroyed from within by a single human warrior. Our weapons are dead, our systems are broken, our crew is dying. The broadcast continued with technical details that made the human officers exchange looks of disbelief. One man had infiltrated a 50-kilometer warship, turned its own systems against it, and killed thousands of crew members through sabotage and psychological warfare. The human Lieutenant Commander Deho Kim has proven that your species cannot be conquered by superior numbers or technology. We order all Valkyrie forces to retreat from human space immediately. Any commander who ignores this order will face the same fate we have suffered. Park activated her communication system and tried to reach Deho directly, but received only static. The alien ship was still too far away for normal radio contact. Ma'am, reported her communications officer, we're detecting massive damage. to the enemy vessel. Hull breaches, power failures, and what looks like internal explosions throughout the ship. Can they still fire their planet-killing weapons? Negative, Admiral. Their energy signatures show barely enough power for life support and basic propulsion. Park allowed herself a small smile. One human had done what an entire fleet couldn't accomplish. Earth was safe, but was Deho still alive? Aboard the dying mothership, Deho worked alongside alien medical teams to treat survivors and evacuate damaged sections. It was strange to be helping the same creatures he had been trying to kill hours earlier. But the war was over now. The 3 alien officers had kept their word. The surrender broadcast was being transmitted continuously, and reports were already coming in of Valkyrie fleets withdrawing from human colonies throughout the galaxy. The psychological impact of the defeat was even greater than the military victory. Commander Thankel approached Deho as he helped move injured aliens to a working medical bay. The alien's shell armor was cracked, and he moved slowly, but his dignity remained intact. "Your people will be proud," Thankel said in careful English. "You have saved not just your world, but your entire species. And you've saved the lives of your remaining crew," Deho replied. "That takes courage, too." Thankel made a sound that might have been alien laughter. "Courage. Yes, we thought we understood that word. But we learned today that true courage is not fighting with superior numbers and weapons. It is fighting alone against impossible odds and refusing to surrender." Engineering Chief Veltar joined them, his 4 arms carrying medical supplies. "The ship will not survive much longer," he reported. "Main structural supports are failing, and we cannot repair the hull breaches with our remaining resources. How long do we have?" Deho asked. "Perhaps 6 hours before catastrophic failure. We must evacuate all surviving personnel to the emergency pods before then." Deho nodded. The alien mothership had served its purpose as a weapon of conquest, but now it would serve a different purpose, as a monument to human determination and alien defeat. Over the next few hours, he helped coordinate the evacuation of nearly 8,000 alien survivors. The ship had lost more than 40,000 crew members to his sabotage and the systematic destruction of their systems. It was the largest military defeat in Valkyrie history, as the last evacuation pods launched toward distant Valkyrie rescue ships. Deho found himself alone on the bridge with the 3 alien officers who had chosen to stay behind to ensure their people's escape. "Why didn't you evacuate with the others?" he asked. Sub-Commander Kethlin gestured toward the massive viewscreen that showed Earth growing larger as their dying ship drifted toward the blue-white planet. "This vessel was our responsibility. We will remain with it until the end." That's suicide. The ship will break apart when it enters Earth's atmosphere." "Yes," Thankel agreed, "but it is the honorable choice. Our people will remember that we faced defeat with dignity." Deho respected their decision, but he had no intention of dying with them. His mission was complete, but he still had a life to live and stories to tell. "There's 1 emergency pod left," he said. "Room for 4. The aliens looked at each other with expressions he was learning to read. Surprise, hope, and something that might have been gratitude. "You would share your escape with us?" Veltar asked. "After everything we have done?" "The war is over," Deho said simply. "You surrendered honorably and kept your word. That matters." They launched from the dying mothership just as its main structural beams began to fail. Through the pod's small windows, they watched the massive vessel break apart in Earth's upper atmosphere. Pieces of hull plating and internal components created spectacular meteor showers as they burned up in the planet's protective embrace. The quantum core, already damaged by Deho's first bomb, finally exploded completely as it hit the denser atmosphere. The blast created a brief second sun in Earth's sky, visible from every continent as a brilliant reminder of humanity's narrow escape from destruction. Admiral Park's recovery ships found the emergency pod floating in high orbit 6 hours later. The rescue team was surprised to find 1 human and 3 aliens inside, all alive and uninjured despite the ordeal they had survived. The debriefing sessions lasted for weeks. Military analysts wanted to understand every detail of Daeho's infiltration and sabotage campaign. Scientists studied the alien technology and tactical information he had gathered. Diplomats questioned the three Valkyrie officers about their society and military capabilities, but the most important outcome was the message that spread throughout human space and beyond. The story of Lieutenant Commander Daeho Kim became legend. Within months, one human had infiltrated the most powerful warship in the galaxy, turned it into a tomb for its crew, and forced an entire alien empire to surrender. The psychological impact was exactly what Earth's leadership had hoped for. Other hostile species reconsidered their plans to attack human colonies. Several alien governments requested peace negotiations rather than risk facing similar infiltration tactics. The reputation of human military capability grew far beyond their actual strength. Daeho himself became a reluctant hero. He accepted promotion to colonel and command of Earth's new Special Operations Division, but he never spoke publicly about the details of his mission. When reporters asked him how one person could defeat 50,000 enemies, he always gave the same answer: humans don't surrender, ever. That's something our enemies need to understand. The three Valkyrie officers were eventually repatriated to their homeworlds as part of a prisoner exchange agreement. But they carried with them stories of human mercy and honor that began to change alien perceptions of humanity, not just as dangerous enemies, but as potential allies worthy of respect. Commander Thankel later wrote in his military memoirs, "We thought humans were prey animals that could be hunted and consumed. We learned instead that they are apex predators, who will turn any trap into a weapon against their enemies. The galaxy is safer with them as friends than as foes." The wreckage of the Death's Herald continued to orbit Earth for several years before finally falling into the planet's atmosphere and burning up completely. But pieces of the alien technology were recovered and studied, leading to advances in human engineering and ship design that would prove valuable in future conflicts. Most importantly, the victory established a new principle in galactic politics: humanity could not be conquered by conventional means. Any species that wanted to challenge human space would have to consider the possibility that their greatest weapons might be turned against them by enemies who refused to accept defeat. In the end, Daeho Kim's mission accomplished more than just saving Earth. It saved humanity's future by establishing their reputation as opponents, too dangerous to fight and allies too valuable to lose. The stars looked different now when humans gazed up at them from their homeworld, not like distant, threatening places where enemies might lurk,